And in our main topic here on Mastering Dungeons today, we are going to talk about monsters, monster groupings, and encounters. Oh,
I'm just
good.
going to go right ahead and apologize to possibly you and all our viewers because this was like a wild idea that was in my head. We'll see how this conversation goes. But I find it fascinating to think about the juxtaposition of CR monster types, especially in the concept of 2024 saying, hey, we gave you more monsters and we fleshed out various monsters. Maybe you had one or two, and now you have multiples. I thought that was just it's something rattling around my brain.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm not going to get anywhere near the rattling in your brain.
That's good.
Uh, I am just going to say that monster groupings have sort of been around for the entirety of D&D. It really came to the fore, though, I would say, in sort of third edition and fourth edition, when we had giants back in first AD&D, right? We had different kinds of demons. But if you wanted a goblin and then a goblin leader, you really just had to add classes to that goblin
Yeah. Yeah.
rather than finding in the monster manual the goblin caster, the goblin shaman.
Hmm.
And we that was fine. We were okay with that. Uh, but that was a much more of a do-it-yourself edition, as was second edition. When you were lucky if you got a new book every 2 years and a new adventure, every 6 months, maybe, and nothing online, obviously. So, uh, yeah, we were just used to doing it ourselves, and no CRs, no formula for making a monster. You just sort of eyeballed it and he, see
Yeah.
let things happen as they may.
And a
And
lot of
for
DMs
me,
still do this too, right? Where they just go, I don't know, I pick something out of the monster book and I throw it at them and we all figure it out. And hats off to folks who do that. I don't know how that it's like a thing I can't even my brain can't comprehend. But I hear it enough to know that it's true.
Mhm. And while I like math
Mm.
and I like the idea that there should be a way to figure things out, I I'm over this idea that CR needs to be perfect,
Mm.
that monsters and power levels need to be perfect.
Mm.
They do need to be looked at. They do need to be
Yeah.
taken into account. But the problem with games as complicated as this and this math that underlies it is that it's never going to be perfect. And as
Yeah.
soon as you think you've got a perfect system, there will be a million people coming to show you how they can imperfecticize this perfect
Yeah.
system,
Yeah.
right?
So I love that you're
So,
saying that.
yeah.
Because that makes this. Let's see where we end up here because
Mhm.
we're going to talk about some of this, and I've taken the lead. So I, of course, brought my math spreadsheety mind. I'm not OCD, but sometimes I can LARP it pretty damn well, and that's what I've done here. And so I'm curious how we kind of think through it from our different angles. I I think that to me, it's about what the game is, right? Like when I'm running Deadlands, as I have been, it'll just be like, oh, there are four of these horrible things in here, and you're like, wow, this will probably murder the party. But
Mhm.
what I do is I'll like give enough hints as to what they can do, and it won't just be that, but it'll be like that can only be killed by magic, which
Mhm.
one of the characters in the party can dish out. Right? It's completely unbalanced. It's a horrible idea, but both times that we've had this come up, they have managed to eke it through. Partly because we do tips and checks and things like that, and we find ways towards it. But it's surprising how the rules do not try to balance anything at all. And the thing about fifth edition, including 2024, is on one hand, it sort of suggests that sort of freedom and run whatever
Mhm.
you want, and then gives you all this math and spends a lot of work on changing the math, right? 2024 has made monsters tougher,
Mhm.
given you harder encounter situations, and removed that multiplier that made battles easier. and it has gone in and then changed how characters work. Right, so it's
Yeah.
like everything has been adjusted.
Yeah. Yeah. And what we're going to talk about is, Teos's mad spreadsheet mind. Uh, in the adventure content that I've created specifically using 2024 rules and 2024
Mhm.
monsters, I've done it the other way, right? I've said, all right, let's see what happens if we throw 10 low level, like CR0 or CR 1/8 creatures
Mhm.
against
Mhm.
a first level party. What does that do to the time? What does that do to the deadliness? All
Yeah.
right, now let's just do 4 CR 1/2. Let's see how that changes things. Okay, let's do just 2 CR1 monsters. Let's see how that changes things. So I've
Yeah.
sort of done it as a trial by fire
Yeah.
development. So
Yeah.
let's
And
let's dig in. Yeah.
I'm really curious about one other thing, which is that the angle of, from a design perspective of, the monster manual, when you are, fashioning this here book that I'm holding up of the monster manual for, 2024 edition, like, do you set out to say, okay, hey, somebody's going to run a bandit encounter, so I need to give them a couple of bandits so you can make it an interesting encounter? Or do you say, hey, when people level up, that bandit's too weak, so what I need to do is give you 5 bandits at various points in time that have been CR'd up so that you can still have that bunch of bandits on the road encounter?
Mhm.
Like what, and one of the things I wanted to look at is, and I was curious about, is what has the 2024 team chosen to do as they give us these more monsters?
Mhm. Well, Teos, let me ask you, what has
Mm.
the 2024 design team chosen to do?
Well, let me give you one little sidebar update, which I don't want to forget this because I don't know where else to put it, but it's interesting information from Tom Dunn, which is that he noted that last week, maybe it was even the week before, they updated the monster manual on D&D Beyond to change the carrion crawler's paralyzing tentacles saving throw to target constitution. They updated the free rules in a variety of ways. For example, they removed the references to copyrighted material like Strahd that had been in the free rules. Maybe this is all in preparation for the SRD 5.2, but it also shows that errata are happening. So any kind of
Mhm.
thing we're talking about, for all we know, it could change. And so far, there isn't an easy way to pick up on these changes unless you have somebody like Tom Dunn who's just eagle-eyeing everything. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll keep an eye on things out there for us, folks.
Yeah.
As you see changes, let us know.
Yeah.
And if you see an actual rattle list, they sometimes these things stealth released and we don't even see it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let us know if they happen.
Yeah. So, all right. So, Shawn, you asked what they've done. What they've done is, and it's one nice thing is on D&D Beyond, when you look at the alphabetical listing of the monsters that are in the book, in the sort of table of contents view, you get to see an expansion. It's a little easier than, like, if you look at the index here, it's just a bunch of words, with page numbers. But what they have really done that works really well is you have the bandit, for example, and then the ones that are like the bandit, captain, crime lord, and deceiver that I can see here, they're indented when they're a member of a group. So it actually
Hmm.
makes it really easy on D&D Beyond to visualize which things are part of a higher grouping, which I like.
Mhm.
One advantage of that format. I wish they'd done that in the layout here. And so you can kind of see, like, okay, and I did a table, so I'm not going to read it all out, but if you're curious, you can see, if you support us on Patreon, you get access to the show notes, and you can see there the listings of groupings where there are more than 2 monsters, so 3 or more. And then there are a number that kind of stood out to me as sort of like, oh, this is interesting what they did here with the CR spread. Because to me, there are kind of 2 ways that you might go about things, right? Like, one is a little more like what you're talking about, where you just kind of go like, I want to fight with some goblins. I'm going to pick, a hexer and a boss and 5 of these dudes. Does that work? And maybe it does,
Mhm.
maybe it doesn't, right? And then the other one is what I was mentioning earlier, where you might say, I need a 10th level bandit encounter. Have they given me what I need, right?
Mhm.
And that's a hard thing that CR is trying to fulfill in both of those scenarios.
And
Thoughts?
and my first thought, the first thing that popped into my head when you said that is, at 10th level, should you be fighting bandits?
Hmm.
Does the
Yeah.
game expect you to still be fighting bandits when you're 10th level? And
And
the
that's
answer is,
yeah.
yeah.
No,
The answer
what
is
do you think?
maybe.
Maybe. Yeah.
The answer is maybe. The answer is, if this goes back to that question about intentionality of
Yeah.
design, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Do we not have 10th level bandits? Now, we do have a high CR bandit, as Teos is going to likely point out later. But what support does that bandit have? And my answer is, at 10th level, when the character's at 10th level, if they're fighting a bandit crime lord, that bandit crime lord is not using bandits as henchmen. They're using ice devils as
Yeah.
henchmen.
Who knows? Right. Yeah.
Right. And is so, but is that what the game expects? Does the game not have an expectation?
Yeah.
We're not really told that I have read anywhere that that is the way it should be.
True.
But that is sort of the way that you end up having to design in order to make CR work.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things that I start finding when I look at these lists, right, it starts making me think about the logic of the world, which is a dangerous thing to do. And I'm not hung up on this, but I can't help but think about, right? When you say that that bandit is at CR 11, I start going, wow, that's a high CR. And I've got some examples later we'll chat about. But what does that tell me about the world that D&D is communicating? And maybe it's like, no, shut up, Teos. It's not anything telling you anything about the world. It's simply trying to help you tell the story of the world that you happen to want. So if there's a CR10 performer, or, you know, a noble that's like super high CR, it's not telling you actually anything about the city unless you want it to, right? It's just a tool. Yeah, we are not told what this means, if anything, right? And so it can be, it's a thing to wrap your head around, maybe, because of how it sort of presents itself in that logic of it. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the issue with any complicated thing,
Yeah.
right? It's, here's the tool, and we hope we are shown how to use it.
Mm-hmm.
But there are people out there that don't want to be told how to use it.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
and will get angry if you try to tell them how to use it, because they
Mm-hmm.
already know how to use it, even if they don't know how to use it.
Yeah.
And and so it's that push and pull of telling you how to use the thing is also limiting how you use the thing.
Right. Yes.
And yeah,
Yes. Yeah,
yeah.
and there's some interesting design. Like I couldn't help but notice the methods, right? We have 6 methods, but
Mhm.
3 of them are CR1 half and 3 of them are CR1 quarter. So somebody had this really strong view of like, man, methods, they're these little dudes, right? They're just little whiffs of elemental magic. There is no method hexer, method crime boss, method overlord.
Right.
It's just, this is what they are, right? And then, but then saw, you know, and so that you can see the kind of attempts as you start looking at these patterns of, all right, what were they trying to say with this? With, you know, skeletons, which don't go higher than CR3 versus something like sphinxes that have CRs 1, 8, 11, 17, right? That one is sort of a special case. Really, these are high CR magical creatures. And so you can sort of make out some of those patterns. Worth also noting, Shawn, that not everything is grouped alphabetically because of this pseudo alphabetical thing. You've got all the dragons you could consider a group. And, you know, like the black dragon is CRs 2, 7, 14, 21. With that, it's pretty clearly, it's both maybe trying to tell, here's how the world works, but also help you to run a black dragon at a bunch of different level parties. Golems, right, have a variety of CRs that all are high, from 9 to 16. Giants range from 5 for hill to 13 storm. Dinosaurs of various types, I can't even be bothered to group them all because they're all weird names. But, you know, so there's some other kind of groupings that aren't maybe as obvious, even if you look at the sort of indexing with the indents.
Mhm. So what did you learn about the creatures that were sort of banded together under a main title?
So I think there's not just one thing. I think that we see, in some cases, they are attempting to let us have an encounter at various levels with these things. sometimes they seem to be trying to mix what you would put in an encounter. And maybe we just look at the goblins as an example.
Okay.
All right. So we got 4 goblins. The minion
Mhm.
is at 1/8 CR, warrior is 1/4, boss is 1, and hexer is 3. The CR1 boss and the CR1/4 already existed. So the warrior and the boss, they were in 2014. So one of the first things I thought is, oh, you added a new one and it's higher CR than the boss.
Mhm.
So are you telling me that the hexer is so powerful compared to the boss that they are higher CR? But why is the boss in charge? And if I try to put on my Keith Amon head and say, well, the goblin boss has a 10 charisma, same as actually the hexer, so it isn't about force of personality. Boss has strength 10, so it's not really about bossing it around physically. Wisdom 8. What enables a boss to lead a hexer?
Mhm.
Maybe they don't. I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, it's sort of strange because it is like boss, but now maybe they were just like, well, we already made 2014's boss. We
Mhm.
can't
You have
change
to keep the
this.
CR the same.
Right. Can't
Right.
change it, and we didn't want to rename it, so it is what it is. And so the hexer just is plain old tougher, right? It has a lower AC, but it has more than twice the hit points of the boss. And so the hexer probably lasts longer in your encounters, which is something to think about.
Mhm.
The goblin boss, and one of the things I was also curious about is synergies. And 4th edition would say things like, hey, here are 4 types of goblins. And they were thinking about roles back then, right? So they would do things like say, like, you know, this goblin is a defender, so it's going to go up and tie up everybody, while the hexer is doing stuff to control you, and the boss is issuing commands, right? That'd be a kind of common way that they would design. There isn't a lot of that in these things. In fact, the goblin boss is one of the few that has a real clear benefit in this kind of leader level, in that it can use its reaction to do what's called redirect attack to move an attack on itself onto an underling. So the minion takes the hit instead of itself.
Mhm.
And maybe that will allow it to outlive the hexer. I'm not so sure. So I tried to think of like, okay, Shawn, what are the encounters like at various levels? And in 2024, we go from having 4 bands of difficulty to just 3: low, moderate, and high. And in general, at the mid and high CRs, it's sort of like the low CRs, everything got a little harder, and then sort of like everything moved one column over. So what was easy is just kind of gone, and what was medium is now low. Deadly became high, and so on. So it all shifted one over. And in each band, so if like we're talking about low, it gives you a number of XP you can use, and you cannot exceed that. If you exceed it, you get into the next level. And so if you exceed high, you're simply not supposed to do it. All right. So that aside, Shawn, we got a level of 5 first level PCs.
Okay. Now you're talking my language here.
Yep. What would you throw at them, goblin wise? You get goblins. What would you do? How would you maybe think about it?
Okay. First level PCs. Just eyeballing it, no math. We're going to throw 4 CR18 goblins. We're going to throw 2 warriors and 1 goblin boss.
Nice. That's pretty good. I actually would have kind of even been, I think, a little less than that. I would have thought like, oh, I throw like, 5 goblin warriors and that's gonna be fine. Which I found, because I kind of asked myself the same question, and I ended up being lower in most of these battles. I think because 2014, I normally design with the multiplier, and so everything is harder in 2014, or it looks harder and can be, right, depending. So up to 10 goblin minions, which are the lowest ones at CR18, are a low challenge. 11 to 15 is a medium challenge. And you can go 16 to 20 goblin minions as a high challenge for 5 first level PCs.
Mhm.
Just
Yeah,
those
and
minions.
and I so th- completely honest here.
Yeah.
About halfway through 2014, I just got rid of the multiplier completely
Yeah. Fair.
because I realized that it really wasn't doing what it was supposed to do.
Yeah.
Uh, with that said, the multiplicity of enemies can really overwhelm a party
Yeah.
if the party doesn't have the exact right makeup.
Yeah. Yeah. And if I try to
Yeah.
put my Tom Dunn hat on, I think what he might say, and Tom can tell me on our Discord if I'm nuts here, but the the multiplier works really well to represent, many creatures being a stronger challenge like that. The and really what's kind of going on is that PCs are often just stronger than that, and that's why people would often leave out the multiplier. But the exception is often the lowest levels of play, and that's where if you had 20 minions attacking with an attack bonus that can hit these PCs, whoa boy, right? Like if they win initiative, I mean, lights out. Similarly, these first level PCs, 5 of them could face up to 7 Goblin Warriors as a moderate challenge, which is more than that's at least 2 more than I would have imagined before I sat down and plunked it into the spreadsheet. And you can mix them really nicely, right? So you could have 2 Goblin Warriors, 11 Goblin Minions, or 3 Warriors and 9 Minions. You can even, at first level, for a moderate challenge, have a Goblin Boss, 2 Warriors, and up to 3 Minions. And again, this is all without that multiplier in 2024. I looked at 2014, and that boss, 2 Warriors, 3 Minions, would be 250 XP over the deadly limit of 500 XP, right, in 2014. So you got to be a little careful with that. A Goblin Hexer at CR3, you can't even put into the mix. It's above max deadly just on its own.
Yeah. And that goes pretty hand in hand with what I found when I was building some encounters for second level characters, but still similar, right?
Yeah.
Was I was putting a lot of really low level creatures in. And for a party that had someone, whether it's through magic or through uh, feats or through fighting styles that could target more than one creature,
Yeah.
then they have no problem, right?
Right. Right. If you have that
you
AoE.
do you'd get them in the AoE, and you're taking creatures with 7 hit points, they're probably falling.
Yeah. Yeah.
You get those characters that can only attack one, and they're taking it down. They're taking the one creature down, but that leaves 7 to attack. And if they're +3 or +4 to hit, chances are good that if your armor class is 13, 14, 15 in that range, you're hitting 50% of the time. And at first level, when you have maybe 8, 9, 10 hit points or lower, if you're a wizard or one of those classes, then it can get deadly real fast.
Yeah. I mean, the first starter set, right? How many of us have
Yeah.
some really good experience with goblins, because you start out with those goblins and there are lots of stories of, and then the goblin crit in that very first ambush and one of the characters is gone, right? Or they go into the cave and they think, yeah, let's go get some goblins, and they get 2 groups hit them. Or I've run, in public, like that last battle in that cave with the, goblin boss and stuff, like just, is the bugbear in there? Oh, just brutal, right? It's just, and what 2024 is telling us is, why don't you add some more goblins?
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of danger there at these low levels, but I like the mix, right? And if I go to second level, same number of PCs, I'm going to use 5 for all these encounters. But if they're second level, we can actually use a Hexer and just a couple of other goblins as a high challenge. Or we can do a boss, 10 warriors, and 2 minions. And you can get a lot of stories out of that mixing there. At third level, we can do a boss, a Hexer, and 4 warriors as a moderate challenge. But we do start running around third level. We start running out of options unless we want to bring in multiple bosses or hexers and mentally change what it is, right? Like 2 hexers are a mid-high challenge for third level. Maybe these are just really rough goblins for some reason, and we have a bunch of them in a cave complex, right? You can start doing that if you are okay with that feel of it, but you're starting to run out of options to make goblins interesting at third level, unless you're running multiple hexers and things like that. So I would say that when I look at the design of 2024, it feels like there's a really good spread here for low levels. and we get many more options. We get a lot of value, dare I say, out of it, a lot of utility, versus having just the CR1 quarter goblin, the CR1 boss. Thoughts?
My first thought is the names of monsters may not mean a lot to you, but they do mean a lot to others.
Yeah.
And so as soon as you name something the boss, your mind says there can only be one boss.
Yeah. Yeah.
When you say crime lord, your mind says there can only be one crime lord.
Yeah.
And that's not the case.
Yeah.
So when you're naming monsters, instead of giving them a title that has so much weight to it, just call it something else. There could be several. And that helps players or game masters get over that mental hurdle of there can only be one boss.
Right.
Call it a goblin bodyguard. Call it a goblin. Now, that could always be in your story a boss.
Yeah. Right. We've given that. Well, This is a great segue to something, because if folks who are interested and who are on our Patreon, you can see my breakdown of the bandits, but time-wise, I'm not going to go into it. Bandits are nice in between, but they're skippable if we look at exactly what Shawn's talking about with the pirates. And the pirates, you get a pirate at CR1, a pirate captain at CR6, and a pirate admiral at CR12. And the first thing I thought was, is CR1 too high a CR? Like, this is a pirate that's as dangerous as Animate Armor, a Bugbear Warrior, an Ogrelon Ogre. And I just thought to myself, I don't know that a pirate is normally, but maybe this is an expert pirate of the seas kind of CR representation. Then the CR, yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, then you can throw in commoners.
Right.
And you could literally throw them in at any level.
Yes.
And they can be the thing that either A, doesn't fight, or B, fights, and they fall easily to make the characters feel like the powerful beings that they are.
Yeah. And speaking of powerful beings, the pirate captain we are told, commands a crew of pirates. CR6. So that's the CR of a Vrock, right? The pirate admiral commands whole pirate fleets. At CR12, that's like an Archmage and a Rinyies. So maybe this is intended as the end boss for a pirate campaign, though then I would want it to be like really cool pirate boss with super cool piratey stuff. And I don't know that this kind of is. The admiral has a rally bonus to grant up to 3 creatures advantage. Otherwise, we don't have any other synergies, right? It's not like a pirate sets up a pirate captain in some way or any of that. They don't work together. They don't have necessarily roles. They just stand on their own. But, I thought that spread of CRs is really fascinating, right?
Yes. And pirate, unless you're talking about technology, pirate assumes water.
Yeah, and a boat.
And so adventuring in that sort of setting comes with its own challenges, its own hazards, where I would say you want to be a little higher level to take on an adventure where if you're pushed overboard, you are able to swim for a long time.
Yeah.
Water breathe, fly being an important one. So I'm not surprised about the CR of the pirate.
Okay.
The interesting juxtaposition of this creature is as powerful as this other creature, the Brock and the pirate lord, or the pirate captain or admiral, is interesting. And I don't know if I give it any more power than I would saying a human can fight a dragon.
Right. Yeah, and that may be. But I just found it catching in my brain, right? And so I started creating pirate encounters, and I think you're right that the vision here must be that kind of like, you're going to be a little higher level, because if you're 5 first level PCs, 2 pirates is a high challenge. we're definitely not going to be on a boat or in hazardous conditions, or you're just going to be way too much. So I thought to myself, okay, let's say I got 5 pirates. When's that a moderate challenge? So level 3 PCs, 5 level 3 PCs, you could face 5 pirates as a moderate challenge. 10 pirates, you could face as a high challenge at level 3 or 4. At level 5, it pops right into low. So sometimes CRs do that, right? And even in 2024, the math can just sort of flip like that, where level 5, 10 pirates is now easy. In fact, you can at level 5 face 13 to 18 pirates at level 5 as a moderate challenge, right? So you could fight a ship of them and do that. So if we mix pirates and a captain, level 4 PCs can face 1 pirate and 1 pirate captain as a high challenge. But it's really around like level 5. You could do a pirate captain and 7 pirates, up to 16 pirates as a high challenge. Level 6 PCs could face the captain and up to 13 pirates as a moderate challenge. So you can really get your ship scenarios kind of going as you get into that level 5 or level 6. Now, the Admiral, that's a high challenge for level 7 PCs all on its own. You have to be level 9 to face Admiral, Captain, and 11 pirates. And if you want like Admiral as a boss, captains as underlings, you could do like at 11th level, 1 Admiral and 5 captains at high level. And that if at level 15 could face 10 captains and an Admirals for sort of renaming what a captain is. But I don't know that that's what we really wanted out of this. And so maybe the Admiral's just trying to sort of show a sort of boss type. I don't know. I kind of struggled with making sense out of what the Admiral is doing for me.
Yeah, I'm going to quickly switch over. I went to Vrock because you had brought
Yeah.
Vrock up, and the thing that popped into my head was in previous editions, all of these demons and all of these devils, what's one of the major things they could do?
I don't know. Oh, summon others?
You got it.
Yeah.
Summon other creatures, sometimes equal to them and sometimes lower level.
Right.
And if you fought a high enough one, they could summon something, and unless the text told you that they don't,
Yeah.
they could summon something. And so they sort of built their own armies as they fought,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
could possibly.
Yeah.
So in that sense, they sort of built their own encounters. An individual pit fiend,
Yeah.
not only could it wreck you, but it could bring in other folks to help wreck you.
Yeah.
So that was what they. I want to switch over quickly to Pirate Captain
Yeah.
because I want to see what a pirate captain's abilities are above and beyond hitting things with a sword
Well, they got a pistol, as does the Admiral.
or shooting things with a pistol.
Mm-hmm.
Charm. Okay, so it's just basically hit things more and harder.
Yeah. You can charm with that bonus action, which is kind of fun.
Yep.
I like that as the sort of, um, I'm a rapscallion that's gonna enchant you, and you can't, you can't hit me, can you? And with the bonus action, it's kind of fun. But otherwise, it's your rapier or pistol, and you have a riposte that allows you to possibly make an attack miss. The Admiral has that rally I talked about. They have a reaction to bump up their AC, and they have. One of the interesting things they've got here is they can use scimitar or pistol, but they also have an awestruck condition that can charm you, or an awestruck action that can charm you, or a poison action to poison. Oh no, I'm sorry. That is part of the scimitar. Never mind.
Yeah, part of the scimitar type.
Okay, I was seeing it. It looks formatting wise on D&D Beyond like it's a separate action, but it's a condition you get to add when you use the scimitar if you don't want to just shoot him for more damage.
And this really brings back around to your point about groups, is that at a CR12 at this admiral, right? Thinking about the term pirate admiral, admirals are above captains,
Right.
if we're going to go by military ranking.
Yeah.
So probably captains would report to the admiral. Captains would be underneath the admiral. So what's even more important than the things that the admiral can do is who the admiral has to protect themselves from problems.
Yeah.
And this is where I both want and don't want more information exactly about what you're talking about in terms of groupings,
Hmm.
right? I want to be told not that an admiral is CR12, but I want to know that give me a sample encounter with an admiral
Mm.
and who you think should be with the admiral and what CR, what level should the characters be to take that on. And then I can build my own looking at
Yeah.
CRs using mages, using Slod, using whatever creature I want. I can say, okay, three of these, two of these, and one of these, and I'm there.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, that was something, in our question last week about what would you change about the monster manual. I think that there may be less utility in sort of having this many variants and more utility in telling me how to use some of them. Because really, we just get the barest, one little paragraph on what a pirate admiral is with some ideas, might launch their fleets from a hidden fortress, might keep maps to where they've hidden their riches. They might ally with oceanic deities, underwater dwellers, and sea monsters as well as their fellow scalawags. Okay. But otherwise, this is a person who commands fleets, and we're not getting that sort of construction idea or things that really jump out at you the way the Monster Overhaul book did, right? With wild concepts around what a pirate admiral might be. We don't get that here. And I think that would be some good space because I think DMs are often asking, how do I make a great encounter? How do I use this in my games? And we're not told. In fact, we're not, I think if you don't have any expertise, you might say, can these all just go together? I don't know. Right? Like,
Well, then now other Sean's going to argue, I don't want that in this book because I want as many monsters as you can give me,
mhm.
including the variants. And I want another book, maybe not a hardcover, maybe not even from Wizards of the Coast, to say, hey, let's take a look at the things that you can do with this. Keith Ammon of the Monsters Know What They're Doing. Teos, Mike Shea, and Scott Gray
Yeah.
with Forge of Foes. And I don't necessarily need wizards to do all of that.
Yeah, I'm going to argue with that, Shawn. As much as I liked making Forge of Foes, and I greatly did, that there's some part of that that should just be. I feel like it's an important part of the toolkit, and there's some amount of it should be in there. It doesn't have to be the size of Forge of Foes, of course, because where you're going to cram that in. But the DMG, for example, they pulled out that table that tells you how to build a monster.
Mhm.
That would have been really useful, right? Or just tell me, what would I do to make a captain into an admiral?
Mhm.
Because I don't know that it's so incredibly different a stat block that I couldn't have just done with that. You
Mhm.
know? I don't know.
Yeah, I, again, I'm of two minds. Part of me
Mm-hmm.
says absolutely give that information,
Yeah.
and part of me says no, don't. Sell the next monster book. Sell the next,
Yeah.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Sell.
Yeah. Well, I think nothing in the world stops people from buying monster books, right? I mean, a third edition, right? It'd be
Right.
like Monster Manual 6 or whatever. Like it was just unstoppable. And Tome of Beasts by a Cold Press, right? Just, endless iterations, and they remake them and they whatevering. It's people are never done buying monsters, which is totally cool. I still think that, and I think that you can give them the how to make cool things or templatify or add monster powers or whatever, and people will still buy a monster book. I don't think you're actually eroding that market, but you've actually now helped people get really excited about the monsters that they have and do something cool with them and make these kinds of things easier. How do I create a bandit encounter or a goblin encounter or a pirate encounter? Make that a little more obvious because the monster book's not telling you, and the DMG super isn't really super telling you either, right? Unless you're going to do a math exercise. In that book, it's absolutely a math exercise, uh, you know,
Right.
versus what it should be.
Right.
It's just an interesting combo of math and story. And
And I have no way of even fathoming how to guess this, but I wonder what the market is
mm,
for people that want that, for
yeah,
people that want the math behind the monsters versus those that just want the monsters. They don't want to
yeah,
do the math. They don't care about the math. They're
mm,
not going to open up that part of the book. even if you give it to them, because they just want to take what's there and play the game.
Yeah.
And if there's any market research that shows less than 50% of the people care about that, then there's a
Right.
better use of the space, better use of the time.
Yeah.
It's hard to say. I
Yeah.
Like I said, there's many Shawns in here, and they
Yeah.
all want different things, and they all understand why things are put in or left out. And sometimes there's no rhyme or reason to it.
So
Sometimes it's just, yeah,
what I'm hearing is there's a market for collectible, stackable Shawn. You know,
absolutely. You stick different eye stalks in my head. Please use a nail gun in your
rivet gun, just rivet the
there.
Shawns together.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah.
So what else? Any other takeaways from your examination of this process?
I think that's really it. I mean, I just find it's the kind of thing that, hopefully for folks at home, this is doing what it's doing for me, which is just sort of thoughtful. It's thought provoking, right? That this to kind of analyze a monster manual this way, I think, and to think about these groupings, and that the book does really seem to do a little bit of everything. It's not just saying, like, which I think fourth edition did more of saying, here are these things that work together as a team. There's very little of that, right? This seems to be more about giving you some options, like we saw with the goblins, to create interesting encounters, or like the pirate, have pirates at various levels show up, but you're going to have to do the rest of the work, because this will not be what we did for the goblins, right? It's not same as cash, right? You cannot just take the admiral and the captain and easily put them in the same encounter. You got to really think about what else is there, and it won't probably be pirates. And so that's right. You've got work to do there because of how they've chosen to approach that spread.
Yeah, and that's work I love to do.
Me too.
Right. I
Yeah.
mean, so I guess, what I would maybe love, this is completely ridiculous, and no one would ever buy it in a million years except me, is I would love just a list of CR for creatures, encounter levels, whatever that used to be, right?
Mm-hmm.
I have 5 first level characters. What can I do to have a high, medium, and low, and have it be 1 CR1, 2 CR1 half, or 2 CR1,
Right.
or right? And just give me the
Yeah.
numbers. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and I'm going to say, all right, I got these 2 things. I need a CR1 half monster that fits here. Oh, even though this is in a city and it's people that they're fighting, I'm going to use the method, and I'm just going to say there are these apprentice conjurers
Right.
that can attack in this way. We're going to use the exact stat block from the ice method, but it's going to be magic
Yeah.
that these people are doing. And that's all I need.
Yeah.
That's
And
all I need.
that was our thought beyond something we did in Forge of Foes, which is that we created tables that have your party level going down,
Mhm.
and for your average party level, what fulfills the concept of a mix of like a solo creature,
Mhm.
a boss and 2 underlings, a boss and a squad of 4, 6 creatures of the same CR, 4 of the same CR, 8 of the same CR. So these kinds of combinations and concepts, because a lot of times just like, like, I want 8 goblins in this room. Well, here's what CR they should be. And maybe use something else to stand in, like you're talking about, or maybe they actually work as goblins. And that's a super handy, like I live off of that list, because that's often how my brain's thinking, is I'm thinking like, I really kind of want like 1 boss, 2 things that are like the powerful lieutenants, and then I want like 5 other creatures. What are my CRs, right?
Right.
Because otherwise, yeah, you have to spreadsheet it in a really bizarre way. So this does it for you to just have that in the book. And I think that is really useful, and I would have loved to have seen it in the Monster Manual.
Yeah. Well, now I need you, Scott, and Mike to update your book to the 2024 math
Yeah.
and the low, medium, high.
Yeah.
So get right on that.
Well, yeah. Well, that chart was based on 10 years of experience. So I think, and honestly, I think about this all the time, where it's like, I don't know how the game has changed yet. And I don't think anybody does. I don't even know that people at Wizards know because I don't know what it means to impact that chart based on topple and cleave and all this stuff, and I don't know what it means based on the monsters being a bit stronger and the legendary monsters. So for now, that in my games, that document is working just fine. But I don't know, like it's gonna take a while to learn the lessons the same way we did these last 10 years.
Yeah. Well, I will wait patiently for that new book, at least 10 years.
You're very kind.
Yeah, I am something. So, anything else to add before we wrap this up? Nope. All right. Then I will say thank you, everyone out there, for listening. I hope you enjoyed this, intellectual conversation between someone who's very smart and me.
It's not at all true. But I do like that you used intellectual conversation. I appreciate that.
Yes. Yeah. So, listeners, thank you. We do have a Patreon that I'm sure you've heard me talk about before. We would very much appreciate it if you are a fan of the show and if you have the means to go to that Patreon at patreon.com/masteringdnd and give us your support, even if it's just a shout out to us that you enjoy what we're doing. We do appreciate that. If you can back us in any other way, you can become a Master of Dungeon supporter. Thank you to those who already do that. A Master of Realm supporter has a list of them in our show notes. And the Masters of the Multiverse, they get a shout out right here on the show, starting with Agile Monk of Fantasy Companion Workshops. Keith Ammon of The Monsters Know What They're Doing. You get 2 shout outs this time. Lou Anders of Lazy Wolf Studios. Craig Bailey, Dave Bastianson, Steve Bissonette, Merrick Blackman, Calvin Bridges Avalos, Robo Ballin, Dead Inertia DM, Evil John, Evan at Nimble Co., Will Doyle, Andy Edmonds at Nerdronomicon.com, James Fisher, Scott Fitzgerald Gray at Insane Angel Studios. Get to work on that new book. William Harshman of Runeforge Tabletop Gaming, Ben Heisler and Paige Lightman, Shawn Hurst, Hyperlexic, Mark and Mary's Gaming Compound, The Mighty Jerd, JR of The Twilight Perspective, Brian King, Jim Klingler, Chad Lench, Paul Mata, The Mathemagician, Eric Mengi, Anna B. Meyer of Fantasy Cartography, Trey McLemore, John Mickey, Mighty Zeus, Sean Molly, Falcon Neal, Tom Nelson of the Deck of Player Safety, JT Norris of DT and Dragons, Phil Wirt from Page, the Philadelphia Era Gaming Expo, Philip and Lindsay, Frog Prince at Tentacles Squelching Wetly, Post Fiction RPG Audio, Ricardo Who Might Adventure, welcome, Robert Pasley, Vladimir Prunner from Croatia, Pugnus, Ozymandias Rex, Runner Rick, Chance Russo at Drago Russo, Andy Shockney, Krishna Samosa, Tim Smith, Spark from Dunor Games, Josh and Lee Wanika of the Tabletop Journeys podcast, Talos the Stormlord, Jeremy Talaman from the D&D and TV podcast, Tres, Joe Tyler, Marcelo de Velasquez, the Valiant DM, James Walton, Graham Ward, Jason Ward from Accidental Cyclops Games, Javier Wozniak, Chris Webster, Zach Types, and Walt Winfrey. Thank you so much for your support. And if you want to support us in other ways, leave us a review wherever you listen to the show, or go to Apple Podcast and do so, or subscribe to our YouTube channel where you get to see these beautiful visages every week. Teos, where can people find your stuff?
Find me at alphastream.org. I think last video I did was on mages and liches and how to run both and what makes them cool stat blocks and neat encounters. So you can check that out on my YouTube channels or go to alphastream.org. Where do we find you, Shawn?
I'm on all the socials at Shawn Merwin. That's ShawnMerwin. And you can also follow the podcast on all of those social medias as well. Or, as I said, go to youtube.com/@masteringdungeons and subscribe and like and do all the fun stuff there. So we have seen groups of monsters and what they mean to the game. So what are we going to do now?
I'm still going to go back and create the Shawn mech that you build up into Super Shawn, I think that's got a lot of fertile ground for design.
All right. All right. Well, while you do that, I'm going to go try to summon a Vrock, see what happens.
Good luck.
Thank you.